Okay, hello everybody. Today is another episode for State of the Americas, and with us is joining the Patriotic Socialist. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great as well. We have for today's show. I would like to discuss your path, your change of mindset in a sort of way, ideologically speaking, of course, because at the end of the day we are all men of action, I believe. About because you started from the left, is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, I got my start on the left. I guess back in like 2011. I got involved with the Occupy Wall Street movement, and from there, several different socialist and communist parties, including the CPUSA and a split off of it, and so on and so forth.
Hmm. But what was the main elements that moved you to, or rather, I say, drew you to the left?
Well, the Iraq War. Um, I grew up with a lot of people who suffered, a lot of vets in my area. I'm from the South, and we provide the majority of the U.S.'s soldiers, and so we have a lot of vets around. And I saw a lot of people go to Afghanistan and Iraq as I was coming up, and I saw a lot of people struggle with poverty and opiate addiction, and so on and so forth. And I knew that there were problems in this country, and something had to be done. Something had to be changed, and I just got involved the best way I knew how. I saw a bunch of other people who were, unhappy with the way things were playing out. Not just on the left, but like libertarians, like the Ron Paul types were active back in those days too, 2011, 2012. But I got involved with that whole group of people just because I felt like something had to be done, and they pointed the finger in the right direction at the banks and what they called the 1%. They accurately described the situation. 1% owns all the wealth, 99% are left with nothing.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Because when we see that the main driving forces behind all these wars are, of course, there are geopolitical interests, but we do see that there is a capitalist, a capitalist mindset behind all of that. Because a lot of these, I would say, these joint ventures, for example, from the military industrial complex, and as well with the oil industry and other private contractors from different lobbies, they were all on board with doing this, and they were all sending money in order to push down this narrative, no, of the war. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, tell me.
Like Lockheed Martin and so on, and they all were collaborating in the oil interests. You can't leave out Israel when you talk about the Middle East. They were definitely there and pushing for the Iraq War and the invasion in Afghanistan. The opiate interests, they were at work in Afghanistan because the opium there, the poppy fields. And, you ask a lot of vets what they were doing in Afghanistan. They were guarding the poppy fields, man. So it all ties together. And all these things that seemingly aren't related, they're all tied together, and it all goes back to the financial and business elite on Wall Street and in the IMF and the Federal Reserve.
Mhm. Because also they were trying to develop this type of, I would say, ideological, ideological mindset or narrative with the neocons, no, and because they became,
Yeah, yeah,
because different from
yeah.
you.
They became.
Yeah, because different from you.
I'm sorry.
Okay, because different from you, they also came from the left, but they became ultra liberals because it suited their geopolitical interests, no, ethnic geopolitical interests, should we say?
Yeah, I think that's part of it when you see the former neocons or the former Trotskyites rather go neocon. I think, but I think the neocons were like the first part of that, because you see the right and the left are becoming, synthesized on both ends. So you've got this red-brown alliance with folks on the far left around issues like Israel and Palestine, anti-war. They go against the corporations, but you've got the same unity on the other end of the spectrum with these extreme liberal social values and such things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because as well, uh, yeah, yeah. Going forward with that is, I will ask you, what were the elements that from the left that got you disinterested in this, yeah, in their vision for action.
Well, the left has always been, I guess the old left anyway, has always been like for the worker, and it has always been more action oriented than the right, in the sense that they're not afraid to go out into the streets and, occupy the public space and speak their mind. Whereas conservatives, they'll sit at home, they're bench warmers. They won't do anything. They don't believe in fighting. They believe in the process. So I was drawn to the left, and I initially got involved with more moderate elements, and like the Democratic Party. I moved on after being involved with the Democratic Party and the typical Occupy crowd, to get involved with groups like the IWW, for example, because I started to see a pattern. The anarchist and the communist groups, they were always more fanatical, and that's something I think that we need to have more of on the, I guess, the right. I guess you could say. Is we need more fanaticism, and I guess that is what drew me to the left initially.
Oh, I see. I see. I see. Interesting. Yeah, because for example, not many know about this, but I also started as an anarchist, but of course not Antifa, not anti-fascist, because I always thought that being anti something makes you, in a way, have you an how to say this, a negative vision for the world, because you're being anti something instead of pro something that is positive. That's how I saw things, because as well, something that not many people have read or know about is this, I believe it was, yeah, the commentaries that Mikhail Bakunin had about Marx, and of course about the international capital system, or financial, should I say. And it's really interesting because it's not that different from what we see people from the left or from the right talking about right now. And it has been more like 200 years ago since he made those claims, and I found it very, very accurate. But in any case, yeah, I also saw this type of action happening with the anarchists, so I decided to join them briefly. But at the end of the day, because there are no rules over there, the movement from the anarchists imploded as well.
Yeah, yeah. You're certainly right that not much has changed. The more things change, the more they stay the same, and we're almost in the same position we were in at the time of Bakunin and others like him. Um, one of my favorite articles is, I can't think of the name of it now, but it is about Mussolini and his parents. I believe his father was an anarchist and involved in many different anarchist circles, mainly around like Proudhon. Him, of course, being from Italy. But this influenced a lot of Mussolini's positions on action and propaganda of the deed and such later on in life. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, yeah. Because for example, we also saw that people from what was the syndicalist movement that was mainly left wing, from Italy, they were the main inspiration for Mussolini in order to make his movement, no?
hmm Yeah, there were a great number of syndicalists like Rossoni and Bianchi and several more that were Sorelian revolutionary syndicalists leading up to World War One, and they became what you call national syndicalists during the war because they were pro-intervention. They believed in like a revolutionary path to war, and they believed that the crisis that the war would create wouldn't only expand Italy to its I guess proper boundaries, but would also create a crisis in Italy itself and abolish the monarchy and create the conditions for a socialist revolution based on the syndical system. And that movement had a lot to do with the origins of fascism.
Yes, yes, because we also see that more explicitly with the movement, the Phalange, no, and the Jones, which was the movements of Primo de Rivera and Ledesma Ramos in Spain. They also draw a lot from the pre-syndicalist, the syndicalist movements that already existed, but with a nationalist twist on all of that. Of course, using using aesthetics from the yeah, you could say that we're more militaristic aesthetics, but of course we are forgetting that this happened in a period after the First World War, so it makes sense to have this kind of militaristic aesthetics within a political movement, because it was something new and refreshing, and also it draw a lot from the previous attempt to reestablish themselves within the war scene, so to speak, no?
Absolutely. In a lot of the early fascist propaganda and National Socialist propaganda, and like in Ernst Younger, you hear a lot about the front soldier. That's a very important part that they played the veterans of World War One in the creation of fascist movements across Europe. You know, even Mosley was a vet. I think most of the ideologues of fascism were vets. Only a few, like Bombacki, for example, didn't participate in the conflict and were opposed to it. I think most of them fought on their respective sides, which is actually kind of different from where we're at today, because most fascists in the United States are anti-war today, and that's seemingly a contradiction, but I don't think really, because it depends on what the aims and the goals of the war are. And for Italy, during World War One, they wanted to bring down the Habsburgs and retake land that was Italian, which isn't much different from what Germany wanted to do in the Second World War in regard to regaining their traditional land. So I think it was revolutionary in the national sense at that time. But if you look at wars in the United States that we're involved in today, they're doing absolutely nothing for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, for example, we have been seeing that this type of imperial type of nationalism that was being tried by the United States, mostly patriotism, no? It has been detrimental to the basic life of the United States.
Yeah, I don't mean to cut you off, but what good is like the sort of patriotism that you get in the United States, the flag waving, sort of thing, when it's not for the people, but it's for another people, a people totally disconnected from us. And that's what's going on. Or our young men are going and dying in wars for Israel and for the global elite. And it's not revolutionary in any sense. I would support a war if it were revolutionary, but I can't think of any scenario where it would be in today's world, in our context anyway. But yeah, that's basically it. We're anti-war because there is no viable war for Americans to participate in. We don't need to be a global hegemon. We can totally get along, by ourselves, or not completely, but we don't have to be completely isolated. We can trade, but we don't need to maintain this like omnipresent military presence all over the world.
Mhm. Yes, definitely, because as I have said before, that you don't you well in my own words, you don't really need to play the global cup for for the entire world. It's like, you can let other people deal with their own affairs, but only if it's extremely necessary. But I don't see that happening today, because, for example, there has been some iterations with, I believe it was China, that Tibet, and they were extremely violent, and that could be, for example, an excuse to meddle within their affairs. But at the same time, we also saw that actually played out by itself. So, in a way, there is no
Yeah,
real reason
yeah.
to be involved in different processes in different places.
Yeah, China, a lot of people are on the China thing. I personally don't think that China is a threat militarily to any country in the West at all. I think that we should keep out of the South China Sea. I think we shouldn't dispute any territories with them. I think we should get out South Korea and, quit being a thorn in China's side. Because other than that, there's no need for any sort of provocation. It's not like China is a colonial power like some people seem to insist these days. They insist that China is going into Africa and going into Latin America as an imperialist power, sometimes even as a colonial power. And I just don't see it. I see mutual respect and friendship and relatively decent trade deals going on, but that's just from my perspective. I could be totally wrong. What's your opinion on the China question?
The Chinese question, I believe
Yes.
we can we need to observe furthermore what China will do within Africa, which is the like their new thing. Let's see how that plays out, and if it plays out as something done in the, let's say, in the detriment of the people from Africa. The, then we can say that we should be aware of China uh, going nearby our
You know,
borders. But only if something like that happens. If it don't, then, you know the answer
mhm,
the answer.
right. I'm pretty sure that I read a report that Italy is investing in the Belt and Road Initiative to help develop African nations, with the idea that if they help develop the nations and get out of these foreign conflicts, of course, that are causing the poverty and the underdevelopment, that they'll be able to curb immigration from that point and from also having stronger borders. So
Hmm.
I'm a big advocate of that. If we can develop these countries where immigrants are pouring in from, uh, so much as they can be developed, then I think it would be a very positive thing. And I'm willing to let China come in and take that role upon themselves if they want to, because Lord knows we've been, ostensibly trying to do that for a long time. The West has in these backward countries, and it hasn't played out too well. But there's a mixture of things going on there, and the intentions aren't always as pure as they make them out to be. But I think that China may be a little bit better off and better suited to tackle these issues. So, well, like you said, we'll see what happens. But I don't think that military intervention is necessary in any case. I don't care if they are a colonial regime, to be honest, but I don't see it though.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, because it is too early to determine whether they are beneficial for a relation, yeah, a commerce and trade relationship, and helping others or not. It's just too early to know about that. But in any case, uh, let's move to another topic, which is
Hmm.
we saw that in the 60s and the 70s there were already countries trying to make what you're trying to make in their own ways, of course, with their own particularities. Like, for example, we saw Perón trying to do that, trying to tap into both essence from the left and the right. But we also see other people doing that. For example, we saw that with Gaddafi, with the Jamahariya, and also with, for example, Ceausescu and national communism. It's like they trying to surpass the boundaries of both left and right, but never forgetting that they need the revolutionary element from the left. So I want to know what's your take on these countries and their movements or their and their attempts.
Well, I'm a huge fan of Gaddafi. Anybody who follows the page would know that. Uh, and the non-aligned movement, I think, was a splendid attempt to reject both Washington and Moscow and try to build a third option, and that is exactly what third positionists are doing on a national level, and it has to be done on an international level too. And you saw that the whole thing wasn't gutless either, because Gaddafi, for example, lent arms and financial aid to the IRA during the Troubles in the 70s, and yeah, and as you said, Romania and I think to an extent Yugoslavia could fall under that umbrella, even though some things occurred under that regime that were quite savory. Uh, Nevertheless, I think that the non-aligned movement was a great thing, and it does embody that spirit that we don't want communism and we don't want capitalism, even though some of these countries were ostensibly communist. They tried to get away from the Soviet system in Yugoslavia. I know less about Romania and what was done there, but I know that in Yugoslavia they tried to get away from the Soviet system and kind of created a sort of corporatist or syndicalist system to go along with the socialist program, I guess you could say, of industry. And they were able to do economic planning with this model, and it seemed to work very well for a while anyway. And as far as foreign policy goes, as I said, it wasn't gutless. They did stand in solidarity with other nationalist movements that were challenging the powers that be in both camps at the time. So it's very interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, definitely. Because, for example, I am trying to propose something like that, but using the principles of Juche, for example, saying that we can have internationalism with nationalism. Nationalism should be the base for a new type of internationalism, and
I'm,
and all of
I'm
these.
sorry.
What?
Oh, I said go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah. Like we need that kind of mindset right now. Like, for example, the people of France right now are like, in a way they are standing themselves by themselves, but of course they do have a lot of support from people from South America, from people from the United States. We have been seeing that on TRS, for example. They have the logo of the yellow vest. Like, these guys are not alone in that regard, but it's not like the non-aligned movement that, like you said, no, that Gaddafi could actually send monetary help for the IRA in order to help with their struggles, and we right now we cannot do that because of how controlling this the liberal system has gone to a lot in a lot of countries.
Hmm. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is sort of like a national internationalism, and that's what we do need. I'm familiar with the Kim Il Sung quote that you're referring to. I'm not too, read up on Juche myself, but I do know that he was right in the sense that we do need a international nationalism, and there's not really a contradiction there. I believe that Mosley spoke about this a bit after the war. His pamphlet, The Alternative, discusses this a bit, and he gets into this when he's talking about European socialism and advocating for a more decentralized version of the EU. And this is like in the 50s and the 60s. And there is a lot of that today. My page is a good example of it, but there are so many more examples of it. Where there are people from all over the world who are nationalists, but they're coming together because we have a common enemy. And I think that a lot of the problems that fascist and National Socialist movements ran into in the Second World War and leading up to it could have been remedied by a more international version of nationalism, and that's something that they lacked. And something that we've got down pat. You mentioned the yellow vests in France. That's really exciting, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And the whole world's watching that. I believe I just read a report on Breitbart. I don't know how accurate it is, but one of the leaders of the yellow vest movement said that if the Macron government retaliates and attacks him, that Macron will end up in a guillotine. So
yeah, definitely. Because that's what I was getting at. Because we have been seeing that this transformation within the, for example, the Syrian War, because the Iraqi war nobody could stop, but the Syrian war was a different type of situation, because a lot of people started to pop up from all over the world and sharing information, sharing videos, sharing intel. Even the same Syrians that were in different places, like for example, there is this chick, Syrian girl, partisan girl. She's always tweeting about all of this stuff, and a lot of people have been retweeting and engaging in these conversations. They say that's how we found out about all the hoax of the white helmet. They were a scam. They were basically Al Qaeda. They were basically ISIS. I believe it was there was a Bolivian actress. Yeah, it's really weird. A Bolivian actress was over there, and she live streamed one of the bases of the white helmets when they were gone from Aleppo, and that's what she found, and she shared that with all over her followers on Twitter, and the same could be said on Facebook, and it was really important.
Yeah, the internet has a lot to do with what's going on and this new international nationalism. I think you're absolutely right. Social media has exploded in the last 10 years, and it connects people in a way that humans have never been connected before. It's kind of odd if you think about it, because they always accuse the nationalists and the fascists and or whatever you want to call us. We're the ones that are intolerant of other peoples and cultures, but you can see that that's clearly just not the case. And this podcast is an example of that. But all over the world, people of different cultures and ethnic groups and religions are united in their opposition to, globalism and international Zog. So.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. Also, something else I wanted to add to this is that, for example, not much is known about the Latin American movements from the last years, because all of them have gone through a process of, I would say, resurgence or rebirth. But most of these movements already had contacts with people from other European movements. For example, most of us know of people from I would say from Spain, from Italy, from the Brazilians know people from Russia, from Serbia. I know people from Lithuania, from I would say from Hungary as well. So it's like we already had this type of connections with them, but we never had the opportunity to connect with any serious movement with the United States from the United States. But now the there has been such a big paradigm shift in these last few years that we are now connecting yeah the these places that we didn't have access to previously.
Hmm. Yeah, you're right about the paradigm shift. Like the fact that Tucker Carlson is on Fox News and Ann Coulter is anti-war and is anti-intervention and is for taxing the rich is amazing. And it just goes to show you how much things have changed in American politics and in politics all over the world. And it coincides with this sort of internationalization of politics. So you've got this massive paradigm shift going on with the left and the right, and you've got this internationalization of politics. And so we've got this incredible situation where you've got all these different movements, for better or for worse, some better than others, all over the world, standing together against one enemy. And I think that's beautiful. You know, you have the Yellow Vests in France, you have the Five Star Movement and Salvini's party, Lega Nord, in Italy. You have all these different groups and movements, and it's just so interesting. It really is.
Hmm. Hmm. Definitely. But at the same time, I wanted to ask you, what do you think was one of the main catalysts in order to make this paradigm shift happen?
Well, I think it's a long time coming. It's like we're seeing the decline of the post-war order is what's really happening, I think. Because, you know, this all started in the 70s. Like I said earlier, with the neocons, the 70s and the 80s, because that's when we got off the gold standard. That's when we started to see the first issues with capitalism following the war in the West. The U.S. sort of ran out of its boom, and that affected the whole world. And so I think that's a big driving force of this new shift, because the left, in the old days, it became comfortable in a way, especially the more honest elements of the left, like the trade unionists and so forth. They became much more comfortable within the system. They gave up, I guess, their fighting spirit, and the left totally shifted because of that. Well, not just because of that, but I think it's because of that in part. There was also like a lot of propaganda and malicious forces driving it, but the left shifted into like this ultra liberal fighting for sexual license sort of thing, and just left the labor movement behind. And basically all the unions were gutted out, and they're toothless now, and the working class was left with no champion, nobody to fight for it. And they just started to look, you know. So when here in America, when Donald Trump, you know, got up on that stage in Philadelphia, I think, and gave the famous speech where he said he was our champion of the forgotten Americans, you know, that appealed to the working class. And you've got all these old Union Democrats voting Republican for the first time in their lives, because somebody was actually going to stand up for them. Somebody was actually going to stand up for the working class, and not just the working class, but actually, you know, the indigenous working class, the white working class here in America, that, you know, doesn't have some special status as an oppressed minority or so on and so forth, as they would have it on the left. And that I think that's what drove the paradigm shift largely, is just that the left abandoned the working class and the right had to step in. And I think that the same could be said, leading up to and immediately following the First World War, because you had like these entrenched social democratic parties in Europe that were very comfortable with the place that they had and their position in government, and they didn't want to rock the boat too much because they were afraid to really challenge things, and that led to extreme deviations from social democracy on the right and the left in Bolshevism and fascism. So it's like 100 years ago, we're standing in the same place today that we were 100 years ago. So
Yeah, definitely. Because, for example, we have been seeing that that's not just an American phenomenon. That also happened over here. Uh, in this last Bolsonaro election, there was this. I believe it was. Yeah, an opinion made by one of the intellectuals from Brazil, and he also spoke about this issue, about how the left, the PT, no, the, the Partido Trabajadores, the Workers' Party, left the classic working class in order to appease for political correctness and pro LGBT uh, feminism and all this kind of crap, and they forget about the real quintessence of what they made them who they are. And that's why a lot of people started to support just just to be contrarian to them, started to support Bolsonaro just because it pissed them off. But they didn't they didn't learn the lesson quite fast, because they lost their election because of that. And that's the main issue that this article points out, that they didn't get, they didn't get the understanding of what was happening quick enough for them to react and appease their base. That's what we have been seeing happening. Not only then, also over here, they have been trying to create this hybrid left, like this progressive, all the all the Soros agenda, and they are happy with that. But there are a lot of people that have patriotic sentiments within the left, and because they have been left behind, they as well started to look at to other other solutions, other people, other visions of the world, and that's how we have been starting to receive a lot of previous left elements, and they are now getting in point with what we are trying to suggest.
absolutely. What basically happens, and it happens everywhere, is the people who are sincere leftists, who have like this patriotic sentiment, who maybe aren't full on with the agenda. They're basically like read out of the left, like one would be read out of a church. They're heretics in the eyes of the majority of the left. And I see this all the time with different popular leftists. I mean, like even like Tulsi Gabbard, practically read out of the left because of her various stances that she doesn't even necessarily take now in regard to like homosexuality. But the left has become like this ultra liberal space where no one can deviate from the party line even just a little bit, and there's no free thought, there's no freedom of discussion. It's just carry the party line, don't ask questions, and it'll all be okay, as they say. We do get a lot of leftists, and there are a lot of people on the left who are in denial, and they just don't know where to go. And there are more people still who are like coming of age or who haven't been politically active in the past who would naturally gravitate towards the left, and they're going to be looking for somebody, and they're going to find us. And I think that's the way that our movement should orient themselves, because it's going to be like an explosion of people that we're going to get in every country if we do the right thing, if we stand up for the working class the right way. And we can. And I think that the fascist movements in Europe prove that, not just the ones in the past, but the ones today, that are much more impressive than the ones we have here in the United States. I don't know about your situation in Latin America, but we don't have very much going on here in the way of the movement the way they do in Europe.
Over here, we can say that there have been different organizations popping up, and all of them have their own. I would say they have their own style, because in the quintessence, they all are pro the true elements from both left and right, but at the same time, these elements also are trying to provide a vision for the future for their nation, for their people, but as well they are trying to share they are providing a shared vision of the future for us as a continent. Like, we should not be enemies with Chile. We should not be enemies with, for example, Colombia or Venezuela. Actually, we should support each other and try to create our own pole of the world, so to speak, to do our own bidding, to have our own future. That's how I have been seeing things playing out as of lately, because there are different movements. For example, in Argentina, that one is more Peronist, the other one is more geopolitical, and the other one is more National Socialist. But that doesn't stop them uh, from talking to other nationalists. Actually, we are all on board with this project to revamp, or like I would say to reclaim our rightful place in history as South America, and that's how things have been going on. But of course, in Central America, it's a different situation, because a lot of these countries have been destabilized just to make profit out of them, and we see the ramifications of that as of today. They are still they can't make a functioning state. It's really weird. The only place that this kind of works a little bit is, I would say, Honduras with the Sandinistas, and it's so weird. The case of Mexico is a little bit different, but they have the same fundamental problems, I would say.
Hmm. Yes, you're totally right that the South Americans need to reassert their independence on the world stage as a bloc or a pole, and I think that every major continental region should do this. You know, Europe, North America, South America. I guess Russia as Eurasia. Arabia. I was always a big fan of the Arab nationalists like Nasser
Hmm.
and Gaddafi kind of pulled away from that, and so did Saddam. But they're both ultimately children of the Arab nationalist pan-Arab vision, and I'm not totally opposed to like pan ethnic or cultural or even multi-ethnic or cultural blocks for regions, as long as there are protections for the various ethnic, national, and cultural groups within those blocks, and no one group can dominate the other in its own territory or under its own state. So you're right in that Latin America should work together more closely. I think that the United States and Canada should work together more closely, and ultimately I think that the European Union should probably not go away completely, even though it's being used for malicious purposes right now, because you see this this theme in a lot of Mosley's writings, again, post-war, about Europe, about European socialism and Europeanation. And it's important to understand that the state doesn't necessarily have to be bound by extreme little differences between every people. We don't need to fracture the state into a million different little states and balkanize the whole world to achieve some kind of ethnic harmony, because you can see that didn't necessarily even work in the Balkans. In fact, it was terrible when Yugoslavia collapsed. So you have this sort of like block theory, I guess, and this multipolar world. And I'm a big supporter of that. I've read a little bit of Dugin, but I don't really base that my belief in that on Dugin. I think it's more or less common sense that every group of people tends to favor its regional interests and work together rather than oppose each other and cut each other down. In the long run, it's going to work out for everybody if we do that.
Mhm. Yes, because also speaking of Dugin, there is this famous quote that he says that today in today's world there is no more left and right. There is just the elite versus the people, and I believe he is actually correct on this, because we have been seeing that in the United States that, for example, the last tweets of Ilan Omar, she criticizing APAC, and we see a lot of the people from both from her camp, from the left, criticizing her, calling her names, trying to the platform her, and also people from the right, like yeah, from the right, from the Ben Shapiro's, the all these type of people, the Dave Rubins, they all have been trying to silence her, but we have been seeing that people from the true right and people from the true left, the honest elements of these two camps, have been actually defending her and saying, it's okay what she's saying right now, because this is a valid criticism. We should not try to not talk about this. Actually, we should talk more on this topic, and we have been seeing that this has have inflamed kind of a, I don't know if it would be attacks, but yes, there has been people trying to attack other honest elements, like for example Michael Tracy. There has been this creator of the intellectual dark web trying to slander him, and we have been seeing the same with all the other people that have been supporting what she said.
I've also seen attempts to slander people like Abby Martin, Jimmy Dore, and Caleb Mop, and different leftists like that in the same way. And of course, Cynthia McKinney for appearing on other shows and things in our circles. And they're very worried about this coalescence of the left and the right. And it's not like any necessarily ideological thing that's driving this. It's just that we're being driven together because you can't have any breathing room for any difference of opinion. We're all the same in the eyes of the elite, and I think the Dugin quote was spot on because there is no more left and right. It is the elite and the people, and when they're looking at us, they don't see any difference between a tanky and a Nazi. They see the same thing, and we're not the same thing, but we're increasingly being driven together. Of course, those are extreme examples of both left and right, but the hard left and the hard right are increasingly being driven together, and there's coalescence happening on the extreme ends of that meshing, and I don't know what's going to come out of it. But I think that you're right that we do need a dialogue, and they need to know that we're ready to have a dialogue with them and work with them on issues like the Israel-Palestine issue. As you mentioned, Ilhan Omar, she was criticized and from really everyone except for a few tankies and a few people on the alt-right. Everybody else was tearing into her over these AIPAC statements, and all she was doing was telling the truth. She wasn't necessarily, being anti-Semitic or whatever their accusations are. She was just telling the honest truth that this is a powerful lobby and it's controlling American politics, and they need to be questioned, because in this era where we're so worried about some Russians buying some Facebook ads once or twice, all of a sudden, it doesn't matter what Israel does. It doesn't matter that AIPAC spends, millions, probably billions, influencing our politicians, and that's just the money you see coming from Israel. That doesn't count all the other Israeli interests in the government and in the private sphere here in the United States. So that's a conversation we need to have with the far left. Like, are you willing to work with us? Because there's going to be an issue. The Antifa types, they're not going to like it, but they don't like these people anyway. So it remains to be seen what's going to happen, but very exciting times we're living in with this red-brown coalescence and this like kosher right, kosher left coalescence on the other end.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely, because we have been seeing people that are supposedly opposed to each other. We saw them on these past few weeks being on point on passing this law that was against the boycott, against the BDS, and the BDS is not a violent movement; it's a peaceful movement, and they are going to outlaw that. I don't know if they already made that or they are going to, but it's insane.
I'm not sure either, but I'm certain, I'm 100% certain that it'll be passed and signed by the president. And basically, it's not just against BDS; it criminalizes any criticism of Israel at all. And they can, it's a blatant violation of the First Amendment, but I wouldn't expect any action from the courts or any other branch of government because it's concerning Israel, and that's the big elephant in the room that nobody can talk about, but everybody can see the influence of. Who are you not allowed to criticize? That's who rules you.
Yeah.
They're going to have, like I said, they're going to have to work with us eventually, the far left, because it's going to come to a point where we're being thrown in jail for saying, repeating basic arguments against the state of Israel. If we call for a two-state solution, if we say that Palestine should be sovereign, that Palestinian children shouldn't be ran over by Yid tanks, then we're going to end up in prison. And I think that we're just going to be pushed together more and more and more. And I think that we already have it figured out in a sense, and we don't need anything from the left. They just need to see that we're the champions of the working class, that we're the real deal. We're not these fake revolutionaries that present ourselves as the champion class, as the upholders of peace and prosperity, and not the communist and the social democratic movements that just fall to pieces immediately every time that they get a little bit of pressure applied to them in this sense. You brought up Ilhan Omar. She did make those statements, and everyone dogpiled her. And a few tankies and a few people on the alt-right were the only people who came to her defense, but she did issue an apology. And even AOC, she even dogpiled on Ilhan Omar over this. And these people, they're not going to be able to stand up to these interests. They're not going to be able to criticize AIPAC and to be able to stand on their own 2 feet and stay part of the left. They're just going to be read out, like I said, and or they're going to cuck. And we're the only people who are going to be able to get into those positions and remain firm. A nationalist will criticize, a real nationalist will criticize Israel and criticize AIPAC and stand firm, and no amount of pressure will result in an apology from us, not in the likes of that or on any other question, like you saw recently with Steve King. But.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Also, to deviate a little bit from the topic, we do have a super chat. Asking you this question: have you read Prussian Socialism by Oswald Spengler? And if so, what are your thoughts on that?
I have not actually read Prussian Socialism. I have got a lot of secondhand sources about Spengler. I haven't really tackled any of his work myself, but I can tell you that from what I know about his theory of Prussian socialism and how it played into the creation of the National Socialist ideology in Germany and may have affected the creation of other patriotic socialist or fascist movements in Europe, is that it was very duty-oriented and it had that Prussian military spirit to it. And as you were talking about earlier, the militaria that was involved in the fascist movements in Spain and Italy and Germany. I think this may have had a lot to do with it. It's that military spirit, that organization of the state like the military, in a sense, that duty over rights, the collective over the individual, order and hierarchy. And I think those things are important, and we should definitely concentrate on upholding values similar to those and attempt to find values like those that are equally as honorable within our own cultures, so we can have an American socialism and a Prussian socialism and 1,000 socialisms, a socialism for every people.
Mhm. By the way, I also have to ask you, what sort of books you read in order to change your mindset from being from the left in order to cross to the right?
Well,
Could you recommend?
for me, it wasn't necessarily. I can recommend some literature for sure, but for me, it wasn't necessarily like I sat down one day and read a book and I said, you know what? Now I'm done being a communist and now I'm a fascist. It didn't exactly happen that way. It took a long time, and a lot of people realized where I was going before I even realized where I was going. That were on the left, and I was read out of the left in a sense, and that's how I ended up here. I can give you a brief. I can retell the story, I guess, briefly. I was in the Party of Communists at the time, and I was on the Central Committee, and I happened to be the chairman of the Oppressed Nationalities Committee, and I was finding out. I had insisted on the creation of this commission and got it approved by a vote, majority vote, and I was charged with finding out which nations existed within America, taking the position that America was a prison house of nations, like Lenin said of Russia, or the Russian Empire at the time. And I identified the black nation, of course, and they were more than happy to accept that. But I started dabbling with other nations that were white, particularly Appalachia. And it was from there that I was basically read out of the left, because they were like, wait a minute, you can't be pro-white. There's no possible conceivable way that these white people could have a nation. They're not. And that's just totally untrue, even by their own standards. Appalachia and the South in the United States generally is, and has always been since the Civil War, an internal resource colony. So that's how I basically moved in the direction of the radical right, and this was in like 2014, and so it hasn't been that long really. But I was read out of the left like that, and I took my allies where I could find them, and I allowed myself to kind of go down to the people and get away from the dogmatic doctrinaire Marxism and, look for a socialism within my own people. And it drew me to these right-wing movements. And before too long, Donald Trump came along, and that pushed me a little further in that direction. And by 2017, I was, pretty involved with the whole alt-right and whatnot. And that's how I ended up here. That was my general trajectory. As far as literature, I would recommend probably The Doctrine of Fascism is like a really good explanation of this fascist worldview that you begin to develop when you break away from Marxism. This spiritual worldview that isn't necessarily materialist, this socialism that comes from the people and from the spirit and from the state, rather than some alien material, like they say scientific socialism, but it's more of like a regimented, like poorly applied scheme, and it's not. It's totally alien to every people, and so that's the trajectory I went on. And like I said, as far as literature goes, there are a few books that I read. Probably, as I said, Doctrine of Fascism. I liked the Green Book by Gaddafi. I had read that when I was a communist, and I was impressed by his critiques of the Soviet system. Another good book is that's very simple is Nazi Stasi by Joseph Goebbels. It explains like what the actual position of the National Socialists in Germany was at the time in simple terms through this invented argument between Goebbels and a German citizen who is not pro-Nazi. So there are a whole number of books on the website that you can check out, and I'm sure the link will be in the description of the video.
Yes.
But it's not, like I said, it's not like a thing where you can just read a book one day and then you're a fascist. It's more of like something that just develops inside of you and organically grows out of a love for your people and your nation and a desire to, have social justice.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because for example over here we say that el que mucho abarca poco aprieta, which means translates to directly the ones that actually are trying to overreach are not going to how to say it, to grasp the middle ground. They were always, if you always overreach, like the classic international socialists, this type of people, you are never going to actually fulfill your role of doing the revolution. Like they are always saying, we are always going to make the revolution happen, but because they are so focused on the outside, on all this international plane of politics, they are never going to do that by themselves. That's one of the main things of my main critiques about that. The second would be, for example, I did talk to Dr. E. Michael Jones. I don't know if you know about him. He wrote the Jewish Revolutionary Spirit, and something very interesting that he said was the next thing. He said that Hegelian dialectic was never meant to be materialist. I mean, it was more of a metaphysical type of thing, because he saw the fall of the Sacro-Roman Empire. I don't remember the name, but it was this 100 years old, yeah, 1,000 years old empire that collapsed before his very own eyes. So it was really impossible for him to think about this on the times on the side of materialism. And he said only one of these people that are from this chaste of humanity would be able to subvert the dialectic of Hegel and turn it into something materialistic. So that's food for thought for the people. Also, there is a guy that's named Blake, and he says hi.
Okay. Where to start? I think you're right about Hegel, and E. Michael Jones is certainly a very interesting character. I'm a big fan of his work. Marx did totally invert the dialectic of Hegel, according to him himself, and he turned it on its head and made it completely material. And it is totally alien to the natural vision of the world for every people, not just the European people. And it's only that particular group of people that can come up with this sort of backward interpretation of reality, where men are slaves to matter, and there is no spiritual essence. There is nothing but like this animalistic urge or instinct, this drive for, whatever is in your gut, or whatever can satiate whatever lust that you have at the moment. And that's just not what drives humanity. There's something greater than animalistic urges that drives people forward. You can't explain away heroism with material interests. You can't explain why people run into cannon fire and machine gun fire with wages and living conditions. You just can't. There's something else to humanity, something that inspires us to do great things, to be creative, to create art, to create music, to even be incredibly violent on a scale that isn't seen in nature. And to try to reduce everything to materialism is the biggest mistake of politics and every political theory up until fascism came about, is because all of the political theories that came out of the French Revolution and the Enlightenment before it were all material, anti-human ideologies that were completely opposed and alien to everything that man knows about himself. And so the world, in a sense, was turned upside down in thought before it was turned upside down in action. And we're, I guess, today seeing the full effect of that, because now boys are girls, the girls are boys, up is down, down is up, everything's inverted. So
Yes, definitely. And also, we have seen the acceleration of these processes done by the media, the think tanks, all of these NGOs that play out for this in order to create this situation. Because under even as abnormal as it would be, under normal circumstances, so to speak, in a weird way to say, this wouldn't happen so fast. So there is more to the question that just we are living in abnormal times. There is much more than that. If we go deeper, if we dive deep down into this thing, no. But also, I wanted to ask you something else. I wanted to ask you about the impressions that you had when you were participating actively with the TWP.
yeah, my impressions were largely positive, and I think a lot of the anti-TWP stuff came at a very particular time of our development as a movement and as a party, and they were definitely targeted. What happened with TWP was unfortunate. I don't want to get into the particulars, but as far as an organization, I think it was the best thing we've ever had, at least since Coughlin's American Social Justice Union, I believe it was, back in the 30s. That was the last real fascist organization we had in the United States that actually embodied this territory between the left and right, beyond the left and right, and opposed to both capitalism and communism. And since then, and prior to the TWP, you had all kinds of different movements that were probably in the same vein or maybe related partially. You know, you had George Lincoln Rockwell, you had the Klan, you had the National Alliance, and groups like that. And these groups, they all missed the mark by a lot, if you ask me. And TWP did something that hasn't, like I said, that hasn't been done since the 30s, and that it really created a nationalist, socialist, working class party, and it created a base in Appalachia, in Ohio, in California, in the areas that it was involved in, and it was largely successful. I think the decline of the TWP had a lot to do with, as I said, malicious forces acting against us at a time when the whole movement was, going through a lot of trouble because of the unfortunate shit show in Charlottesville that the police and the state and the Antifa cooperated to create. And we were singled out. And we were an easy target, and a few of us, we're not supermodels, but nobody ever said politics was a beauty contest anyway. The thing is that we were the most effective group, in my opinion, that existed for a long time, and you can see that in that we had job training programs. We could get 100 guys in 3 months' notice to any major city in the United States to carry out a demonstration for our people. We had connections with the international national movement, so we were good on that front, and we were recruiting all the time. And if you look at who we were recruiting, it was, we had some of the youngest people involved in this thing, involved in TWP. We had a lot of young men. And that's in pretty stark contrast with how the nationalist movement has looked in the United States for the past 45 or 50 years. It's all been old men. And just these washed up old boomers, and no young men would get within a mile of a nationalist meeting. But TWP changed all that, and the fact that we were run down like that, it just I think speaks volumes to how effective we really were, because you don't get attacked if you aren't doing anything that is effective.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely, because I saw you, I believe it was in 2016. I saw the ideas playing out, how the debate that Heimbach had with an Antifa guy, and the Antifa, and I believe it was a Zionist that popped up afterwards. It was a weird situation, and really odd and weird situation, but I did like his critique to the anti-fascist, and the question that he was asking to the guy, because he is basically asked him, okay, but what's your vision for the future? We will create something new, but but okay, what is this something new that you're talking about? Does it even have a form? It's like, communism. It's like, no, that's no answer. It was really funny, and I actually give him credit for that. But in any case,
Yeah,
I did saw
yeah.
that I did see that you guys were expanding, and at the same time, like you're saying, Charlottesville happened, and that's where the axe started to fall in different groups, in different people. But also
Mm.
there was this union, so to say, in a way, because I saw a lot of people from mainly Identity Europa that were saying that no, these people are bad optics and all that stuff, and it's like, dude, it doesn't matter if they are out there doing something good, you shouldn't punch right, like what a lot of people say, no, don't punch right.
Mhm.
You shouldn't slander them, just
They said, I think, the critiques were coming from, as you said, different groups of people who weren't necessarily in the same social group or class that people in TWP were in. A lot of the criticism was coming from two different places. It was coming from older people who had been involved in, like the suit and tie conference type of white nationalism, like the Ambrin, Jared Taylor type stuff. And the younger, more middle class and upper middle class elements around Identity Europa and readers of like the Daily Storm, or people who were, a little bit higher up on the social ladder, who didn't necessarily rub shoulders that much with the working class. If they did, it was probably like the busboy or the waiter or waitress at the restaurant, and they weren't used to seeing working class people. Is all I can figure out, because as I said, we weren't putting on a beauty contest or anything in TWP, but if you look at the way most of our people looked, we looked like average people that work and live in the areas where we were trying to build a base of support and expand, and that goes a long way. You're not going to get the majority of working class people on your side if you come in and you act like you're better than them. You're better dressed, you're better looking, you're better, you're just better all the way around, and you've got this idea that you're superior to the people you're trying to represent. You're not going to make any inroads. You want to be a mirror of the person that you want to represent. You want to be a servant of the people. And I think that's what TWP was always going for. And that's the reason that we got so many people who were, I guess, tacky or unkempt, because they were just average working class guys that, were disillusioned with the system. They didn't see a future for themselves or their family, and they were looking for an alternative, and that's what we provided. Mm-hmm. And I can't help it if some of these frat boys, they don't like it, but I mean, it comes with the territory, and I'm willing to put up with that. The only advice I can give them is, if you don't like it, then build it better and prove to us that your optics are better and that your strategy is better. And we'll see what happens, because I don't think that the last word has been written on the Wignat question, as they call it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Because, for example, a lot of these people are trying to to go off the GOP. That's their strategy, and we have seen that how did that play out with Steve King and all of this. This other guy, James, also got kicked out of the GOP. So that's not a viable option unless you wanna do the life. You can bear the lifestyle of a spy. If you can, then go ahead. And I know I can't, so I couldn't even try that or attempt to try that. But something else that you said is very true, which is you do not stare down at other people just because they are from a different social class. What you want to do is, as a leader of the nation of the people, is to bring them, to rise them up to the rightful place that they should have in the politics, because it affects them directly. You shouldn't shut them down, look them down. It's just retarded, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the problem with the left and the right. The communists and a big section of the alt-right, they have the same problem. They look down on the working class. They think that they're ignorant. They don't want to go and be with the people, and that's ultimately what it takes, I think, in the final analysis, is to go and be with the people. And that, as I said before, that's how I came to be a fascist or a patriotic socialist or whatever. In the end, is because I went down to the people, and I wanted to find out what my people wanted. What were their grievances. What were their daily lives like, and I've lived it my whole life, but you have to, relate to others and find out, what do they want? How can you help them? Because that's ultimately what we're out to do. We're here to serve the people. That's what anybody who is in politics, who isn't here to serve the people is not a good person and shouldn't be involved in politics, in my opinion, because that's the name of the game, and all the people who don't want to serve the people and want to serve themselves have to be rooted out and cast aside.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely, I agree, because in Latin American politics we see a lot of these type of people. Nowadays, there has been an interesting shift within the, for example, the more local elections. We see people that are actually there in order to serve their communities, and that's something that has been resonating with a lot of people. And also that's how we are trying to present our message, because it's not about us. It's like, for example, I could be famous tomorrow, and it doesn't matter, because I will use that in order to share, to send the message to my people, in order to tell them how we can start moving forward. And that's the end of it. Like, I don't care about any other thing than that, and I can die for that.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, yes, tomorrow an earthquake can happen and I can die tomorrow. But I don't care. I what I care is what I can do with the time that I have at this, right now, on this moment. No.
Yes, and it's incredibly important that we have this mindset going forward, because there are, as you say, a lot of people who are just in this for their own ego or some other reason, and this isn't, and not just like in I don't just mean like the alt right. I mean in politics generally. I think
Yes.
most people are self-serving. They're in it for fame. They're in it for money. They're in it for influence, and these people shouldn't have ever been in the system to begin with. And that's ultimately why we can't work within the GOP, because you're just surrounded by people who are self-serving, people who hate the people that elected them, that don't care at the very best, and they're just going to go along with whatever the establishment and the elite say, because they don't have a vested interest in the nation. They only have an interest in themselves and their pocketbooks.
Hmm.
And real quick, that going among the people, that is something that, as I said, TWP excelled in. We had all of these different programs. We had coat drives. We had, I think we had food drives, and several things like that, where we were just, kind of out there and on the streets with people in our communities. And that makes a big difference, because you can go to a major city and you can have a march and you can get up on the pulpit and preach, but at the end of the day, people want to know what you can give to them, and they want to know that they can trust you, and they want to know you and see you as a brother and a friend, and that's how you make a revolution.
Hmm. Yes, exactly. Exactly. I completely agree with that. And this is what, in my country at least, people did try in the 70s. But sooner than later, this terrorism started. There were Maoists and terrorists. They started to kill all of the local leaders, and that's how things changed for us. Because there were a lot of people from the left that had this type of patriotic sentiments, that because they didn't know that fascism, or maybe other doctrines of the 70s, didn't weren't available to them, that didn't stop them in order to create their own ideas, to expose their own thoughts that resonated with the people that were trying to serve. But like I'm saying, because of these Maoist communist terrorists, they started to kill all of these leaders, and that completely uh, backfilled the advance of a type of patriotic, proto-patriotic socialism, so to speak. But in any case, I believe we are reaching out, getting really close to the hour, because we have stuff to do. So, do you want to add something else that you might have forgotten to say?
Yeah, I think that the the Yellow Vest movement in France. I think I may have mentioned that earlier, but I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Um, I think that it is a very interesting development, and I think we can't exactly copy the tactics and the strategies of the Yellow Vest movement, but I believe that we should try to get involved with popular uprisings that aren't necessarily initiated by nationalists. As you can see, the French have done a very good job of this. Action Française and other groups have been heavily involved in the Yellow Vest movement. Recruitment has exploded. The way I always look at it is imagine a nationalist group like the TWP being able to go back to 2011 during the Occupy Wall Street unrest and build a base there, or even further back during the Tea Party days, because you could probably even draw from a conservative element like that. But the point is just the general theme of you want to be among the people, you want to go down into these popular movements and get involved however you can, and not try to substitute yourself for the people or the movement, and that's how you'll ultimately win and build a mass party and achieve a revolution for your nation and your people. And that's always been my goal.
Yeah, definitely. And let's remember that we are, it's not like our let's say our struggles are connected. Not in the very same, they are not the very same type of struggles, because you up there think things on the basis of race. Over here is more on the basis of society and civilization and so forth and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, for example, let's like they are doing right now to Maduro. What would it be if, let's say, we have a working South American Union, and you guys succeed in order to send one of your guys in order to in the UN, and let's say, well, if Macron is right now, and all the leadership of France are now recognizing this new guy, this Freemason Jadot, as the president of Venezuela. We right now as a union, and you guys up there can recognize another guy in France from the Yellow Vest protest as the new president. It's like that would be very interesting development if that could happen in the future. I would like
Yeah.
It's like, oh, douchebag. If you're going to start doing this, we are going to do that the same to you. So you should better start right now before we move on some pieces over there.
Did you see where a while back when the Yellow Vest movement first started, Assad sent out a tweet that called for the removal of Macron, said that he was abusing his citizens and terrorizing them. France repeated those lies against the Assad regime, and I thought that was very humorous.
Yeah.
The shoe's on the other foot now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, because we have been seeing these people that were anti-Syria, anti-intervention in Syria. They are now supporting the people from France, from the Yellow Vest, and it's amazing. It's like our struggles are connected, not under similar circumstances, but by sheer force of nature, because these people, these globalists, these liberals, this new world order, they want the Judeo right, left, whatever, the Zionists, they want to crush, to stomp all over us, and we need to fight back, and that's what we have been doing, kind of successfully to an extent, but we need to move forward, because we're right now seeing that this path that opened before us is slowly closing.
Yeah. I'm just not very clear on how we could do that. I don't know what the situation calls for. I don't think it necessarily calls for like an international, like the Soviet or the Marxist model had going on, but I think we need some kind of conference of illiberal and nationalist groups from the left and the right from all over the world to have regular meetings somewhere, probably in Europe or Latin America, because God knows you couldn't come to the United States in this political climate without being attacked by Antifa. But we need some kind of cooperation and coalescence, I think, on some organized scale. I just don't know how to initiate that or what that would look like. But hopefully we can think about that, and something may come of it in the future.
Yes, absolutely, and this is one of the main reasons for my channel, because it's like I am presenting you the interesting people and the honest movements from all over the Americas. That's the main drive before my channel. It's not about fame or money or whatever. That's the main reason why I do this.
Yeah, is to build that connection, which is incredibly important. We'll work together, and I think we'll be better off for it, and we won't make the same mistakes that our predecessors did in the 20th century. We'll
Yes.
make a fascism for the 21st century that is national and international.
Yes, because remember, they try to do all of that alone, like autistically alone, and this is
Mhm.
that was the main reason before the downfall. They didn't comprehend the geopolitical and metapolitical issues happening around them. They just focused too much on themselves, and that this is by knowing this, we can actually surpass what they did. And of course, this is very let's say very ambitious, but I believe it's possible to do this.
Indeed. Well, on that note, I believe I'm going to have to go. I have a prior engagement, but I appreciate you having me on. I enjoyed the conversation we had here very much, and I hope you'll have me on again in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I also have to go right now. So see ya, folks. Next time, perhaps we can have something more civilizational or cultural oriented, because
Mhm.
never forget about this other side of politics, which is metapolitics and culture. In any case, I thank you for being with us today, and let's hopefully we can have another discussion in the future.
Mhm.
So see ya, guys.